Hi, I'm Penny Z, and it's Tuesday night at 6:30, so that means it's time for what we're reading. Tonight, I have the wonderful and very fun to talk to Jill Van and Chris Smit. Is that right?
You
I
got it.
wrote it down and then I couldn't find it. Oh my goodness. Everyone's like, who knows me? Says, yes, Penny has a horrible memory, so sorry. But Jill and Chris are with DisArt, and you can cheat and go immediately on your phone and look up disartnow.org to find out what that's all about. But Chris and Jill are going to tell us, explain to us all, what is DisArt?
All right. Well, thanks, Penny, for having us on this
Thank you.
show. And we do encourage people to go to disartnow.org because mostly we want to plug the book and the author of the book because she's a friend of ours. And so as an organization, we consider ourselves unapologetic advocates for the disability community and for disability culture. And the way that most people will know us publicly at this point is through, we've had exhibition at Frederick Meyer Gardens and Sculpture Park in 2018. We've had a couple fashion shows. We had a disability drag show this last fall, or a year ago fall. And we have a podcast called Dystopia Podcast that we encourage all of you to check out. And we're also getting into just organically opportunities for consultation and coaching around better understanding disability culture and its place within the diversity, equity, inclusion conversation.
That's right.
Now explain to me, what exactly is disability culture?
So disability culture is a word that we use to talk about the lived experience of disability. And a way to do that is to think about what are some of the values and traditions and norms of disabled folks. And as a historical minority group, disabled people have a shared history and a shared heritage, really, of living disabled lives together. And so disability culture is all the wonderful ways that disability gets represented in the world as well. So we at DisArt are really interested and committed to disability art. And that art is an expression of disability culture as well, because again, that disability culture is the stories that we tell about the lived experience of physical and mental differences. And that's exactly what tonight's book is about too. So,
yeah. But before we get into that, I know that you're doing something now, COVID related.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's called the My Dearest Friends Project, and you can find that on Instagram at My Dearest Friends Project. And what it is we've partnered and collaborate with an artist. Her name's Oakley Thiele. And it's a call and response experiment and experience for people. So people are writing in submissions that say, my dearest friends, and then whatever it means, whatever's going on in their life during COVID, whatever's going on in their life right now. In the beginning, it was, and oftentimes still, it's like mask up. You know, there's a lot of people who depend on other people's choices in order to get out of the home. We know people who have been not able to leave the home because of health concerns and extra health concerns related to COVID for, since March, very limited. And so there's people who are saying, please do your part. Others are saying, I'm disabled and proud. I'm a creative person. Or why has it taken so long for the non-disabled community to catch on to the fact that remote work and living is possible and it's okay and we can be productive, because the disability community has been asking for those things for so many years. And so, there's both joy and pain and sorrow and excitement and hope and all the things that you expect in any type of collective response to how we're living right now. And then there's beautiful illustrations, black and white illustrations by Oakley Thiele in response to those specific messages. And then we also have been thankful to be able to do some podcast interviews with specific people in the disability community. that about their experiences within the time of COVID pandemic.
Is Oakley Thiele a local artist?
She's not. Actually, yeah. Did she grow up in Michigan? Jill, am I right with that?
We should know this, Oakley. I'm sorry. If you're listening,
one question you won't be able to answer.
She went to Interlochen, and now she's going to school for her Master's of Fine Arts.
Yeah,
great. You guys are doing such great things. So exciting.
Thanks, Penny.
Now.org. Check it out. But this is what we're reading. So I'm going to ask you the question. What are you guys reading?
Okay, so I'm going to try and do this. It's really weird, the video here, but
Yay, I can see it.
I'm trying.
Yeah, it works. It works.
I'll stay
There
still.
you go.
Gollum Girl by Reba Lehrer.
Yes. So we are reading a book called Gollum Girl by Reba Lehrer. We are honored to be somebody who knows Reba in real life and love her very much and have been so excited and anticipating this book, which was released really just a couple weeks ago. And so it is a really interesting, we're in a really interesting season of a lot of books coming out about disability that are autobiographies. There's a wonderful book called Being Human by Judy Heumann, an unrepentant memoir of disability rights that came out recently. What Can a Body Do by Sarah Hendren. Heumann, which Jill read. I think I have not read that whole book yet, but Heumann, the deaf-blind woman who conquered Harvard Law, by a really fascinating advocate, Haben Girma, and then some other work by a woman named Alice Wong, a book called Disability Visibility. And so we've been looking at these books, and Reba's book called Gollum Girl is what we've been reading, and just so excited to help all of us understand the fact that every experience of disability is unique. And so every story about disability is also unique. And that's been a really cool part about this book.
Yay. So it's her memoir.
Yeah, it's her memoir. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about her life.
For sure. Jill, you want to? Yeah.
Yeah. So what we decided, it'd be best to just pull from her.
Yeah.
We know her personally as a friend and an artist who in 2017, there was an exhibition at the Fed Galleries at KCAD of her work, some of her work. And she also was a presenter at a symposium that we did at that same time, where she talked about identity and disability identity. And what you get in this book, you get to know Reba very well. Like she is, there's, from our perspective, she's raw and authentic and talks about her journey as being someone born with spina bifida and what that experience has been like living with a disability in a world that doesn't welcome you and stares at you and asks really painful questions and all along her journey has questioned her existence. And
there's this, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris. Yeah.
Well, and there's this way in which the book is her own identification of who she is in the world, and learning, just like all of us do, learning who yourself is a complicated journey. And the way that she talks about it, that the title of the book is called Gollum Girl. And Gollum, we have a quote from Reba. She was on Weekend Edition last weekend with Scott Simon. And here's how she explains Gollum. And I think it's really great for your reader or for your viewers to listen to her own voice. So she says this: there's a very old legend in Jewish folklore about a rabbi who creates a monster out of mud from a river in Prague to protect the Jews who are about to be attacked by a pogrom of peasantry. And so he builds this monster, and it rounds up all the miscreants, puts them in jail. But in the process, the monster gets bigger and bigger and begins to have ideas of its own. And as soon as it does, the rabbi destroys it. and it falls back into a heap of mud. And so here's what she says. And so I thought about my life in those terms, in that I was built by others in a variety of senses, but in the immediate medical sense by many, many doctors. And also the way that she has been built by the impressions and ignorance and quite frankly, just the discrimination in her life. And so that idea of Gollum Girl is really phenomenal and a really unique way of understanding disability. Yeah.
And claiming it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So does she feel now that she's putting herself forward instead of the ideas of others that, I mean, does she have that thing where the rabbi is going to try to destroy her now? Is that a part of that? Or in breaking away from what people, the way they look at her, does it somehow free her in some way?
That's interesting I think that's a great question,
Yeah.
because this is about what you're referring to, I think, is the journey, and kind of wanting to know the end, like what really happens is like, how does everything go? But, there's a couple of times where, I mean, Kindle, this is how we've been reading this. Kindle is fabulous. And I don't know why I haven't used Kindle before, but where you can highlight things. And so we could just go back to little quotes that she has here. Here's a quote. It says, "Or perhaps my body just refused to be normal, to blend in, to be anything other than its own peculiar self. My life would have been different had I listened to that lesson." Right. So she had learned that lesson over and over again when she was younger, but she's saying once she embraces that, it's changed things. And while my own feelings about disability were entirely negative, it would be decades before I would find a political and cultural identity built around disability. And so the journey does take place where she's claiming it. And you may hear some people refer to the word crip. Crip is a reclaiming of identity. And I feel like that's what she's doing in this book.
Absolutely. I think that's right. She speaks about all elements of her identity as well. And Dishart is has always been interested in, but even more so today, in the climate that we're living in politically, to look at the intersections of identity. And so Reba's story is not only a story about a disabled woman, but it's also about a woman and someone who is Jewish and someone who is a member of the LGBTQ community. And so there's all these different elements of her story. And I think what's really significant about that is that people often melt each other down to that one identifiable identity, right? And for Reba, she was melted down into this Gollum, right? But the book is about a celebration of sort of moving away from that, and actually beginning to understand her own experience as unique and as layered, right? As layered, right?
And I would say in relationship to others. So throughout the book, you not only get to read her words, but she has image after image, because she's an artist and a really accomplished artist. And the way she creates art is in relationship with someone else. And so she builds, so they're all portraits. And so she builds relationships. She spends months, weeks, however long it takes to really get to know people. And in it sounds like she's learned, she gets to know herself better as well. And it's just beautiful, this interconnected world that she's created through art and the disability community. And we know, she's have people all over that are part of her community. So that intersectionality and that interrelationship, I think, are really key.
Absolutely.
Well, I have never had the experience of reading a memoir of someone that I knew personally.
Yeah.
Was that very odd for you? Did you find out things that maybe were a little too personal? I mean,
well, what a great question. That's a really great question. I've known Reba a little longer than Jill, but we've both known her for quite some time. And to know Reba is to talk to Reba, and to talk to Reba is to know Reba. And just like Jill was saying, you know, her relationships in her life are the core of her spirit. And so we have heard many of these stories before, but we've heard them from her over a glass of wine, or, you know, or whatever. And so it was nice. The one thing I will say is I'm planning to get the audiobook, because she reads it in her own voice. And I think that might be a little freaky. Like having my earphones on.
Her voice was already in my ear the whole time I was reading.
Yeah.
So to add, I mean, it will be valuable. And I think we've heard a lot of these stories because Reba is a very open person. We've interviewed her a couple times for our podcast, so we've heard some of these stories, but not to the depth. Like it was for me on some of them. There's her relationship with her mother, Carol, is significant throughout the memoir. And while I knew that she had this relationship that was ambivalent, I guess is the word to use, this really revealed the depth of that relationship, the joys and the sorrows, and you know, the humanity of the surface level that we had heard in the past. And so there's so much complexity to Reba as a person, and there's so much complexity that she presents in this book.
Well, I'm so glad that you're bringing it to all of us, and also you told KDL about it, which got us to buy it, which is fabulous.
Yeah, we're trying to bring more disability, the writers and the people that we know into our community, because this is where we live and work, and we want to have more conversations like this.
Yeah, and you use the recommended purchase form that's available on our website. So everyone feel free to do that, because we don't always hear about some of these wonderful gems. So thank you for that. And everyone else can put that on hold now. Tell us the title one more time. Gollum Girl.
Gollum Girl, a Memoir by Reba Lehrer. And some folks will remember, actually, Reba was here and gave a TED Talk at TEDx Grand Rapids. And so she's and she was here, of course, like Jill said, for the symposium, and so she's a fan of Grand Rapids. She'll be back soon, I hope.
Yay! So another book that you both, thank you, Jill and Chris, because I asked them, I said, what about, you know, I'm a fiction. If you watch the show, you know I like the fiction. What can I read fiction-wise that's going to help me know a little bit more about the world of people with disabilities? And they suggested this book that I am listening to called Good Kings, Bad Kings. And you know this author too, Susan Newsfall.
That's right. Yeah.
You guys are so connected.
We're lucky to have amazingly talented creative friends. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Susan, we were telling you before we started this conversation on air, is that Susan is mentioned in Reba's book as well.
That's right. That's a key,
key person and a pivotal person in, you know, in helping her in her life.
Yeah.
And this book we already had in the library. We've got some copies of it. It's also on Hoopla, which means everybody can check it out right now on audiobook or an ebook. And I'm listening to the audiobook. I'm reading it right now. And what I love about it is it's an ensemble cast. So if you're an audiobook lover, you'll love some of these where they've got a different actor for every character. And this book has a lot of great characters. They're in this institution in Chicago, which I'm listening to the first speaker, who's Yesemi, am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Is talking about being stuck there. She's a young Puerto Rican woman and a girl, really, and was sent there in school because she's in a wheelchair. She doesn't say that. She says it in a way that I probably wouldn't say it on air.
Sure.
It's really fun to listen to her voice and her spunk and her spine, and you know, maybe a little too much, because in the first episode you meet her, she hits somebody repeatedly with her crutch. Right.
She's a feisty woman, that's for sure. Yeah. Right. Right.
So
It's that book is so important, Penny, because it's one of the only books um, that written by a disabled author, and all the characters have this very authentic voice, because she, Susan Nussbaum, was an instructor and a teacher at that school, and at Access Living in Chicago, which is a very famous center for independent living. And so she knew all of those types of people, right? They're based on real people. And so it's a very authentic story of what high school kids who are in an enclosed school feel like and go through. And of course, the tie-in here too is that Reba had that experience as well. And so that's in the book as well. Her experience at Condon, right? Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd love to read one part of this too, because it does tie, if that's okay.
Yeah.
For Reba, growing up in going to the school, and we believe it's pronounced Condon, Condon, and so it was a school where all the students were disabled. But she describes it as at the time much more progressive than other schools for disabled people. And so for her, she says, Condon was the one place where I felt safe, where my friends and I had invented our own ways to use our bodies and minds, where we'd made a world for ourselves, for one another, to replace the one in which we were irrelevant, where we had no value. So for Reba, it's wonderful to hear these moments of disability community and to realize that that's what she was trying to get back to.
Yeah.
And that it exists. And that's really what Disart is doing, is working and trying to find or help bring people together, because this community is so wonderful. And understanding.
This one is not wonderful. I'm just saying, back to the book, because I'm a librarian. This one is not wonderful.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to balance it out.
But here's the the interesting part about Good Kings, Bad Kings is that even in a situation that is certainly not preferred or even healthy, those students found each other. And the end of the book, I won't say the end of the book, but
I'm not there yet.
Right. Yeah. But there is a way in which Reba's words that Jill just read come to life in that book as well. And so it's a really good read.
But if I could go back to the My Dearest Friends project and the work that we're doing in that area, and with COVID, institutions and congregate spaces are hotbeds for the virus. And so it's very complicated. It's a very complicated conversation of how community is done well. And if people have seen Crip Camp, and which Judy Heumann is part of, and people may have watched that film, it's on Netflix. Great disability history culture lesson, if you haven't seen it. And there shows the camp where everybody was just thriving in a community. And so it's really interesting. Just like one size doesn't fit all in any of our lived experiences, neither do these school settings and camp settings. And so we encourage people to just keep digging and digging and digging.
And as you can tell, we're very excited about this topic. So we're always excited to talk about it, and we just encourage people to take a look at what we're up to at disartnow.org and come out and see what we're up to.
Yes, and we're going to hold up the books one more time. Jill, hold it too. And put you on the spot. There we go. Okay.
Here we go.
Yay!
I'm doing nothing, you guys.
Yeah, I just bear the rose between two thorns on my. No, I'm just kidding. That's just the thing. You are the rose, Chris. But
I am the rose. I thought this show was called What We're Eating, so I've been very confused for the last 10 minutes. So I guess okay.
It'd be fun to just watch people eat.
Yeah, that's right.
Combine it. Here you go. Extended viewing.
Well, thank you, Jill, and thank you, Chris. You were delightful, and hope everybody digs to find out about disartnow.org and check out some of these books. Next week, we have Kendra from We Are Lit bookstore. She does pop-up multicultural bookstores, usually for people who might not ordinarily get to a bookstore. So it's going to be really exciting. I can't wait to talk to her. So everybody tune in again next week at 6:30. And thank you again so much, Jill and Chris.
Thanks, Penny. Thanks for having us. Bye, everybody. Have a good night.